Hi guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode. In this episode we are looking at fuchsias, and we bought a fuchsia the other week from the Fuchsia Show. So we're going to start off looking at a couple of different gardens that are using fuchsias. One is in North Wales called Penrhyn Castle, and the other one was at the Fuchsia Show. So stay tuned. So we're off to Penrhyn Castle, and this one is in North Wales. It's a very amazing looking castle. It was built around the 1820s by the Penrhyn family, and in particular George Penrhyn. And he was a owner of one of the largest quarries of slate in the world, and they had a few disputes at the time regarding the unions and workers. It was a bit of a thing, but the garden itself was a very nice garden laid out with some ponds, some fountains, some pergolas, and we're just walking through now to where the fuchsias were located. It's a fairly large garden, and there were sort of other walks that you could walk around as well. But in these box hedges, you've got a selection of fuchsias. I'm not quite sure what particular cultivar that is, because there are literally hundreds of cultivars, but I'm guessing that one was probably used just as an annual. In the other borders, you've got penstemons, and in that border you can see there's fuchsias, and they were just sort of nicely arranged around that pond. Fuchsias do require a little bit of watering over the summer period, as they are quite a thirsty sort of plants. And here you've got something like Fuchsia Magelinka, which I think that is a particular variety. It's a hardy variety. Sometimes it's deciduous in colder climates, but it was growing and trained over that nice archway. Okay guys, that was Penrhyn Castle. Now we're going to have a look at the Fuchsia Festival. The Fuchsia Festival. But before we do that, we'll just want to quickly talk about a couple of native fuchsias that we have. We've got Fuchsia procumbens, which is a beautiful ground cover, very useful plant. It's a little bit more drought tolerant than many fuchsias, and it's got an interesting flower. And we also have a Fuchsia excorticata, which is a tree fuchsia, the New Zealand native tree fuchsia, and grows upwards of beyond 4 meters and can get quite tall. So in the Fuchsia Show, you just had to pay, I think it was $10 to get in, and it was hosted at a large property, a large acreage, with a nice garden and an old villa. And most of the fuchsias were located in the garage to the right there. With some nice tiger lilies there and some dahlias along the border, and bromeliads. They also had on show some vintage cars looking really good. And so this is the main display and competition. Didn't really realise how much goes into growing fuchsias, and they are all categorised into different areas, and all these there's literally about 100 species and then thousands of cultivars of fuchsias. But if you're looking for a particular cultivar, then that is a good website to go to. So you can see there's double ones, there's sort of standard trained ones and single ones. That's one called Red Rain, which is a bit of a cross between, I believe with Magelinka. So you've got the standard double class, singles, doubles, all sorts of different varieties in the show. That one there would be a Magelinka variegata. Of course, you can even get hanging baskets, and you can train them, as we saw in Penrhyn Castle, that you could train them all over a archway. So after this, there was also a nice shade house where they had a good selection of fuchsias. And fuchsias do require kind of more filtered light. Again, they're quite a thirsty sort of plant, and they like a lot of fertilizer and liquid feed to keep them flowering. Generally, what you're supposed to do is you pick off the dead flowers. You don't want them to go to seed, and otherwise they produce small fruits, and that sort of drains the plant. And they don't particularly like it too cold or too hot. So they're kind of almost like those plants that would grow in a similar conditions to, say, ferns and things like that. So if you're in a drought sort of area where you can't use a lot of water because you're on water tanks, then they're probably not a good choice. Some quite a few different types here. That's a sort of almost a miniature flowering one that we saw in the garden. So we're looking now probably at the plants, the fuchsias that are out in the garden that are a little bit more adapted to the sort of the dry and drought or wet conditions. This one here, I'm not quite sure. It could be another major linker fuchsia, sometimes called the hardy fuchsia, just simply because it will grow outside. You can see it's growing under a tree, so there's a little bit of filtered light. So we're coming around to the sort of front garden, and this is a nice part of the Fuchsia Show, is that you could walk around this garden, and it was a beautiful garden to walk around. Lots of different plants in here, from roses to dahlias to geraniums, and you can see the grass is a bit sort of yellow because we've been in a bit of a drought since about Christmas. It hasn't really rained too much. And then there we've got some salvias in the middle there. And here's a bit of a combination. So we've got the lamb's ears and the fuchsia, and you can see the bumblebees are just going crazy on those fuchsias. So they're a good one to attract other insects into the garden, especially bees. Cool little border there with little rocks that are just sort of placed on the edge just to define that border. And of course mulch, a lot of bark mulch keeps the moisture in the soil, so ideal for keep doing that. That looks like Fuchsia majorlinka tricolour. It's another popular plant that is a little bit hardier than some of the fuchsias. A lot of just fuchsias just dotted around the garden and under the tree. I was quite surprised at how many different flower types there are in fuchsias. I wasn't expecting to see so many different types. Now this plant is also sort of, you can see this one at Auckland Botanic Gardens, so it's called Fuchsia Garden Meister Bonstead, and it is a particularly a good variety. And the lamb's ears are looking pretty good. It's just a shot of the garden there. Some different ones. They're generally flowering over the sort of summer period, and there it is then. So just a closer look at that Fuchsia Garden Meister Bonstead. It's a sort of different sort of leaf. It's got a sort of brownish sort of leaf, and it tends to be like it in the Auckland conditions. Doesn't like it too cold. And then we're going to leave that. It's a little plant pot there. I think that was to collect some earwigs or pests that will go in there, and then you can get rid of them. Okay guys, we're going to round it up there. This is one of our favourites that we saw on the show, and we'll see you in the next video.